Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerdy Multiverse and yet another breakdown. Today we will be breaking down and giving our initial thoughts on episode 6 being the final episode of the first season of the Negan and Maggie spin-off series, The Walking Dead: Dead City, and episode 6 being titled Doma Smo. First off, the title of this episode, Doma Smo, actually means we are home in Croatian. Anyways though, this episode starts off almost immediately after the end of the previous one as Ginny fired the flare into the sky and both Negan and Maggie took notice of it. As this episode picks up, Negan and Pearlie almost immediately arrive where the flare was shot off from and look for Maggie, only for Ginny to pop out and be briefly reunited with Negan. Maggie wasn't far behind though, and she shows up next, and you can tell that she's pretty nervous and worried, and this is because she knows that Ginny knows that she has been lying to Negan this entire time, and that he's in trouble and doesn't even know it yet. Negan gets upset with Ginny and insists that she needs to go back to Maggie's place, the bricks, where she was left, as it is actually safe there. She speaks for the first time since she's met Negan and tells him that she doesn't want to go, but he practically forces her to leave after he tells her that he's not the man that she thinks he is, that he isn't wanted for stealing but for killing 5 men, of course being the ones who attacked Annie. But one of these men happened to be Ginny's own father. When she learns this, she begins to run off, followed by Pearlie, as he will be taking her back to the bricks as he himself heads back to the mainland as well to return to New Babylon. And of course, Ginny never got the chance to warn Negan of Maggie's intentions, but it is clear that he noticed something is up. Cutting to Pearlie and Ginny as they use the floating dock plan that Pearlie mentioned to Negan in the last episode to set up their return to the mainland. Going back to Maggie and Negan now by themselves as they watch over parts of the city, conversing with one another with some small talk, as Maggie sort of comforts Negan about how it was likely hard to tell Ginny what he told her, and Maggie ends up telling a story about her mother and her family and what it was like when she was a kid. How her mother, who we actually never met in the original series as she was already passed by then, would tell Maggie stories of Santa and how he would visit at the Macy's store with all of the toys that she would have lost. As she looks down to the streets at the store as a car drives by and towards a building that appears on fire. So of course they follow the car as tensions are clearly building up between the two, as we know something will happen between them in this episode. They arrive at the place, and as they walk inside, Negan asks Maggie what Ginny wanted to tell him back there, as he's clearly starting to notice that something is amiss. Where Maggie tries to say that maybe Ginny wanted to explain herself to Negan as to why she was there, but it grows silent and awkward very fast, as this is clearly not the truth. And just like that, Maggie pulls out her knife and tries attacking Negan, but he quickly throws her down and makes a run for it. They eventually end up catching up to each other on some beams right above a bunch of walkers. Negan clearly does not want to fight her here, but she continues to go at it. Eventually she even stabs Negan, where after he kicks her off of the beams and jumps down after her, taking her knife away and making her surrender, where Negan gives her the usual talk that they have had practically a few times now throughout the show about how she lied and that the Croat never took any grain and only took Hershel as a way for Maggie to bring Negan in. And it's ironic because they could have actually gotten Hershel back if they had just worked together regularly. The Croat and his men then arrive and pick the two up as Maggie holds a knife to Negan's throat the minute that he turns his back on her, and throughout the entire car ride to their destination. Cutting to Pearlie as he arrives at the bricks to drop off Ginny, but she leaves behind a shirt and seemingly doesn't come back to get it, which may be what gets Pearlie in the trouble he gets in later in the episode, but I'm actually not entirely sure on that. Now in the modified ambulance, Maggie continues to hold Negan as a hostage for the Croat as he talks about the sanctuary and the old memories with Negan, which really makes me want some more flashback scenes with these guys. Again, mentioning how he met with Jerome on the mainland, who is clearly a former savior, but one who wasn't a major character and one we haven't seen before, at least to my knowledge. But the Croat talks about how Jerome eventually told him of a story about the Widow, which is of course the nickname that Maggie gained by the Saviors during the All-Out War arc in the original series. Finally arriving to where the Croat is holding Hershel as they begin to make the exchange, where Negan asks Maggie to take care of Ginny as Hershel walks out and she sees him for the first time. Negan grabs Maggie's hand and lowers her knife, and we can notice that this is the first time that he has gotten so close to her without her flinching, as Negan willingly walks off, giving himself over to the Croat in return for Hershel to get back to Maggie. Negan takes one last look before going around the corner to his new fate, as Maggie and Hershel hug one another, reuniting for the first time after his capture. We then cut to Pearly as he pulls up to New Babylon, first looking at the hung walkers that are out front, either reflecting on what could have happened to Negan or even reflecting on how his views may have changed and the laws that are in order at New Babylon may be too extreme in this new world. He then meets with what we can assume are the higher ups and the leader of the Marshals and New Babylon, as he tells a false story of what became of Negan, how he had to shoot and kill him during an altercation. But this lady mentions how it would have been better to display Negan to set an example. This fake story is noticeable, and she makes a silent threat towards Pearly as she mentions his 3 daughters, as she wants the truth, giving him a cigar and mentioning how the best way to cure tobacco leaves is with central heating, as she tells him to retell his story, but this time to tell her everything about the methane, obviously being the resource and energy that the Croat has been producing using the dead. How she even knew about it is unbeknownst to me, but maybe she could just tell as Pearly was forced to inhale some, or maybe it was from the left behind clothing of Ginny's as she was in the methane filled sewers. Cutting to Maggie and Hershel as they sit in their truck and try to reconnect, or at least Maggie tries to, but Hershel just isn't having it and is back to his normal snappy and angry attitude. He eventually goes off on her about how she didn't even really rescue him here and how she just had her chance at revenge, and she has always looked over his shoulder looking around for Negan. He is obviously pretty whiny here, as he was even before he was kidnapped by the Croat apparently, but you can also see that he does have a point here as well. And we actually do get to see the Statue of Liberty here, and even though it is pretty damaged, it is still standing. I hope we get to see more of it in season 2, as it is a huge landmark and looks awesome in a post-apocalyptic world. We see Negan and the Croat as they are heading to the theater, where the Croat talks to him about old memories and how much of a notable leader Negan was, almost like an actor. Eventually he says that he shouldn't have killed that girl from the kingdom, and promises Negan that it will never happen again. Now back at the bricks, Maggie walks into Ginny's room as she is asleep and returns a dinosaur plushie to her, I guess showing those first signs of taking care of her like Negan asked of her, and also showing that she didn't ever go through with burning it, as she then walks into Hershel's room and tries to talk to him once more. This time around it actually works out, trying to explain herself to Hershel and that she thought about what he had said, telling him that she is going to finish this thing with Negan so that she can finally just let it all go. A step in the right direction. Arriving at the theater, the Croat brings Negan to the room where the Dama is, expressing how this is almost like watching 2 parents get back together, as he gets ready to introduce Negan to the Dama. As he brings Negan in and introduces him, the Dama quickly thanks him and dismisses him, as she begins discussing this plan of hers to Negan. The plan being that they will unite all of the different groups and settlements on the island, even all the way to Harlem, under one banner with Negan in control and as the leader, to get ready for the people who wish to bring the laws of the old world back, but more importantly, wish to take any sort of natural resource that is available to them. This is referring to New Babylon and how they will soon be after the methane. However, the Dama is afraid that Negan may not be the same character he used to be, but of course, she has already planned for that. So she hands him a set of keys and a small box. As he opens it up, we find out that she kept a piece of Hershel and removed his toe, and that if anything were to happen, she could always go back and get more. Rather creepy and gruesome if you ask me. Practically threatening and trapping Negan into this newfound partnership. The Dama seems rather menacing. As this happens, Maggie finds some of Hershel's drawings in his room as she makes a bed. Eventually looking through them and finding a drawing of the vault where he was held as a prisoner and another drawing of the Dama herself. As we see the two look down at the new horrors and discoveries, going to a split screen of their faces symmetrical and synced, as they both look up, hinting that the story is far from over, and these two are not even close to moving on from this situation now. Ending this episode and the finale off with a big cliffhanger essentially. Another really good episode and a rather good ending to what is just this first season, as we now know there is officially going to be a season 2. This episode had loads of fun and intense moments with a big hint at what's to come, and that the story here is really only just getting started. I really enjoyed this episode and this entire season overall. All of the new characters introduced are super interesting and I can't wait to see where we go next with all of them. I thought that there were lots of great moments in this season and it only leaves me more excited for the second one, as well as the Daryl Dixon series which is officially coming out in September, as well as the Rick and Michonne spin-off which has been revealed to be called The Ones Who Live. And both of those spin-offs by themselves look super exciting and incredible, by the way. Overall though, I thought this was a great finale and a great first season for the show that had some incredible storytelling and some great moments in it. And a pretty intense cliffhanger as well. I honestly have hardly anything negative to say about this episode or even the season as a whole, other than some parts being rather slow compared to others, but I was rather impressed with the turnout of this season. And now that this season is over and how fun it really was, you can definitely expect some more content revolving around the world of The Walking Dead, especially with the upcoming Daryl series, so keep your eyes out for breakdowns on that when it airs. But of course, with all of that being said, I would like to hear about your thoughts on this episode and the season as a whole as well, so make sure to leave them down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed our breakdown and review on this episode and the season, don't forget to give it a like. And with that being said, we will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.